tonight's review, Shadow of the Colossus. When an innocent woman is unjustly sacrificed, Wanda takes a sacred sword and enters the realm of Dorim, in the hopes that the Great Spirits will bring her back to life. Dorim will grant his wish if he defeats the 16 Colossi guarding the realm. But does Wanda know what he's really up against? Hi there, it's me the Jonin Monkey again, once again bringing you the best of the worst of video game storytelling. It's a little unnerving talking about a game like Shadow of the Colossus because it's not just a commercial success, it's a treasured classic. Not only is it widely regarded as one of the best games in the PlayStation 2's vast library, but if someone is trying to show people how gaming can be an art form, there's a good chance this game will be one of their first examples. It is still praised to this day and has been analysed by countless critics and blog writers, to the point where part of me wondered if it was worth doing this review at all. But, like Wanda, I must not be intimidated by this colossi of doubt that's lurking around in my mind, so let's get this review started. At first glance, a narrative reviewer like myself seems to be at a disadvantage, since both the plot and the prose of Shadow of the Colossus are very simplistic. Wanda is a hero with no personality or backstory, and whilst he wants to save Mono, we never know if it's out of love for her or a sense of justice. All of the background details are vague, and the story follows a very simple pattern until the very end, so there isn't that much story in the traditional sense. But like I said last month, if you take the minimalist route, your gameplay and level design essentially become the plot. In other words, Shadow of the Colossus tells most of its story through the gameplay, or rather, through its pacing and atmosphere. Dorim announces who the next Colossi is, and the player travels to that location. There's no action sequences or puzzle solving on this journey, just the player traversing the land in search of the next battle. That may not sound exciting, but navigating your way through the serene landscapes acts as a quiet build-up to the Colossi, especially when you start getting close to their arena and your mind starts to anticipate what kind of opponents you'll be facing. Then you get to the battles themselves, and even these big action sequences are expertly plotted. Some of you may have seen a pacing graph like this before. It's usually used to show how to pace a story or a level, but it honestly feels like each Colossi has been designed with something like this in mind. Even when the Colossi attacks you from the start, there'll be lulls where you're forced on the defensive, trying to find their weaknesses, etc. But then you discover the weak point and the excitement ramps back up as you get the upper hand. Even the music is timed to this pacing, transitioning from one song to the other as the situation changes. Every single step has been carefully planned, yet it feels spontaneous and natural, like the player is creating the story as they play. Admittedly, the one weakness of this system is that it makes minor glitches and delaying tactics all the more noticeable. I mean, you never hear stories like, "Seeing that victory was in sight, Wanda moved to the creature's belly so he could land the final blow. But in his excitement, his hands kept grabbing the wrong part of the armor, refusing to obey the commands his mind was giving them. When he finally grasped the hairs on the belly of the beast, the Colossi struck so furiously that Wanda could only wait for a calm moment to strike, which took longer than anyone could possibly imagine. Wanda ran across the creature's back until he finally found the last vital, which suddenly closed as the Colossi descended back into the sand, thus starting the painful process all over again." But even with small moments like that, it's a great way to tell a story through gameplay and immerse the player in the experience. But what sets the game apart is the excellent score by Kao Otani. It has many inspiring tunes for when you're scaling the Colossi, but rather than focusing on those songs, The score set an atmosphere I can only describe as reverent but melancholy. This is what turns the game from a simple power fantasy to an emotional journey, as these are not simple monsters. They're creatures that have been around for thousands of years. Heck, even the victory music has this tone. It's in awe of your achievements, but it's also mourning the death of a majestic creature that has lived for so long. And if I'm going to talk about great design choices, I have to talk about the finale.
Big spoilers ahead!
The finale already has a lot going for it. In terms of gameplay, you have the battle against Malus, which is already a great climax due to how intimidating it is. Not only does it dwarf Wanda in size, it's barely interested in him. The little man's efforts to climb it are only a source of bemusement rather than anger. Hell, even the music is afraid of this thing! And in terms of story, this final journey is a series of emotional punches. Not only do you lose your steed in a heart-wrenching sacrifice, but Wanda's quest ends in failure, as he gets stabbed and betrayed before being turned into a monster and sealed away by some monks. His only reward is for Mono to come back to life and find him reborn as a mewling baby. But the element I want to focus on is the use of player control. The last sequence could have been one long cutscene for the player to watch, but by giving the player control at just the right moments, the game maintains the player's emotional connection to these events. We can only watch as the monks mercilessly attack Wanda, but the game then returns control to the player after Dorum turns him into a monster, giving them the chance to lash out at the monks in rage, to punish them for what they've done. But then control is taken away as the monks reactivate the seal and flee the temple, sealing Dorum away, but trapping Wanda as well. And then control is returned once again, forcing you to experience Wanda's final moments. Yes, when you get right down to it, you cannot influence any of the outcomes of this ending, but that's not the point. Giving the player a chance to fight and resist, no matter how futile, draws them further into the experience. You're not simply watching Wanda in the hope he finds a way out. You're fighting alongside him, and his desperation becomes your desperation. It is a masterful move that makes a great ending all the more memorable. So, we've established that Shadow of the Colossus is a good game, but we haven't answered that question in my own head. What can I say that hasn't been said 1,000 times already? Well, I'll answer that voice with one simple question. Why does this game resonate with so many people? Yeah, it is incredibly well crafted, but the same can be said of many other games. So why is this game a classic? It has a simplistic story that doesn't attempt to say anything other than giant monsters are scary and life is harsh. So why is it people consider this game and this story an artistic pinnacle of this medium? After giving this question some thought, I finally found an answer. But to explain it, I'm gonna have to go on a tangent, so bear with me a moment. I'm sure all of you have heard of King Arthur in some shape or form. And if I asked you to tell me what you know about him, you would start talking about his sword Excalibur, the wizard Merlin, or how he led the famous Knights of the Round Table. But I'll bet none of you can tell me anything about his character, his arc, or what themes were present in his tales. because he never had any of those things. His tale wasn't a simple story by any means. It is filled with drama, conflict and tragedy. But ultimately, it was a story written long ago and based around characters that were ideals rather than people. And yet despite that, King Arthur's legend is a story that has been retold again and again and again. The tales of courage, heroism and tragedy all seem to appeal to the base core of human existence, and the grand images of the Lady in the Lake, the Sword and the Stone, and the departure to Avalon continue to inspire people's hearts to this day. And it's not just King Arthur who has this honour. The stories of Hercules, Perseus, the Norse gods, all of these simple tales of one-note characters have lived on in our culture and will continue to be told for centuries. And Shadow of the Colossus recreates that spirit. It is not a complex story, but it is filled with fantastical imagery and sweeping emotions. It captures the essence of those ancient stories without simply copying them or throwing in names for reference's sake. It is a new mythology for a new world. This is not to say that complex characters and stories are a bad thing, of course. Those can be just as influential and inspiring. But the timeless quality that keeps those ancient legends alive goes a long way to explain why Shadow of the Colossus is loved to this day. Whatever your feelings on Shadow of the Colossus, I hope my answer satisfies you. And if you haven't played this game yet, just do it. I've been the Jonin Monkey, and until next time, cheerio!